Okay, so every day I want to do, doesn't matter. A lot of what I think about in a day has to do with the question of, is there something that I could say that hasn't been said before, essentially? Is there an experience that I could conceive of that's inconceivable? Because it kind of breaks down into like, are, would we just go out and colonize another planet and then another planet and then another planet and another galaxy and another, just like, I don't know. Sounds like more human stuff. Like we've kind of reached our, like the threshold of our physical and mental capacity. It's not to say like it could be interpreted as like, oh, life support, or that's, just it wouldn't be fun. It's like it might, it could, it would. It's all crazy. It's all amazing. It's all wild that any of it is existing. It just doesn't really add up to like, oh, so we go and mine more like asteroid belts and harness more energy and but live like terrestrial lives, like in the human body. And like for the most part, everything is more human stuff. Like, I don't see how that's possible. There's nothing about the trajectory of what I've seen in 33 years that indicates to me that that would be a a good bet. I mean, a fantastic example is like it's like we saw The Matrix and we're like, oh, okay, we totally conceived of, you know, uh simulation theory. It's like, okay, it's like a solid like way of kind of grasping like that what we see like could not be what's so, right? And then everything everywhere all at once. And to a great degree, like some of the Marvel films like Doctor Strange and stuff, it's like not only could it not be what we suppose, it could be infinite things. It could be everything. Like whatever you can conceive of that is possible, and therefore it's true. It's truly possible. And so that is kind of like the indicator to me is like the trajectory of the trajectory is like we have whatever I am is all of that. And none of it. Uh, and so drawing it back into the original thing of like, what could I conceive of that's inconceivable? Like, what is like, is there more meaning to derive from this like human experience? Or does it have to like go into another medium? Medium's a fine word. Yeah. Like the medium is the message. Interesting. Because it doesn't seem like it feels like hyperbolic geometry in a way, like where it's like bursting at the seams. Like the experience is like wanting to be set free. There's more that wants to be like perceived, aware of in every moment. And this is another thing that I think is worth talking about is that I need to refine how I talk about like, yeah, particularly gaslighting. This word is going to come up more and more, where people are going to like click over into a different way of experiencing the world. Essentially, there are two modes. Well, it could be like on a continuum, but there seems to be something fundamental about like there's a threshold that's broken through where suddenly it's like, reality kind of glimmers. It's like everything is curious, everything is like open, available, uh, open to inquiry. And kind of this like state of stagnation and knowing and resistance, and certainly we can throw in like FUD. And so there's like, it's like, it is in a way kind of like one or the other. Like you're either going to respond to something with like, I disagree or I agree, or like, interesting, like, tell me more. Like, yes, and essentially building, like propagating, exponentiating, which you see in things like Mandelbrot fractal, or it's like you see that reality wants to build on itself, wants to generate novelty. And the means by which it's done is like through freedom, like through spacious, like uh, lack of resistance, less resistance, more openness. And so I meet people more and more who it's clear that their kind of their fundamental demeanor is of a nature of like one or the other, essentially. And I don't understand, like, it's funny. Every time I say I don't understand, it's that like I can't like immediately like I know I can grasp like down to the root of the thing, but like it's not that I can't know, it's that like I when I say I don't know, it's because I know that there is illusion involved. There's something that is like masking the truth of the matter. And so I say I don't know why adults like can look at a child and say like, oh, they're like so curious and open and like and then kind of at the same time be like closed and guarded or something like that. You see that a human being can occupy that space, like that you can exist as curious. That is a mind space that one can inhibit, like inhabit. And this kind of like mental block or resistance to just like or just not even considering the possibility, oh, I could be that way. Like that could be my experience of the world is curious and open. And so you know that there's levels of illusion that are like that don't allow one to experience that. So drawing back to gaslighting, because I definitely let that one go. It's been coming up more and more where I'm like, I hear the individual who is experiencing illusion. They experience the world in a state of illusion. And the process of being patient, like continually reinforcing my experience as patient and accepting and open. Because like they it's not like the person one can even realize that they don't know, like they don't know what's going on. And it's tricky because with some you're like, I don't know if I even see a light at the end of the tunnel for this one. Like, for particularly like my father or something, it's like barring like a near death experience or him accidentally smoking DMT or something, like that's pretty much the way that he's going to be for the remaining whatever years of his life, which is odd. You're like to see it like really clear where you're like, you know, you could be a different way, right? Like you could stop doing that stuff, right? It's like a space that you could do. And then at the same time, you're like, I don't know. But apparently not. But apparently maybe. Um, what else do I want to talk about? Leveling. Just listening to poker again about the process of like trying to figure out what another is doing. You're like, oh, we're in a game where they have an objective. Okay. So I know that, and they know that I know that, and I know that they know that I know that. So there's this leveling effect, right? You get level. And you can have that in any sport, right? Like there's, you know what the opponent is attempting to do, and so you can act according to that. You can inhabit their world, and they can inhabit yours. And I'm thinking about that on a more like cosmic scale of like, well, it sure seems like the universe likes to create stuff. And I know that. I like to create stuff. Win-win. It's like leveling up in reality is like, if you stare long enough at the abyss stares back. Like if you think there's some kind of circular something about the examination of one's experience. Yeah. And again, this is so, it's so funny because like here I am, like I'm reflecting on these things. And it's like, I am almost certain that there is someone who is already like, if they were listening, they're like, yeah, I've already, word, already been there, done that. Like, I figured that out. Or not even alive today. Like, you could even rewind 1,000 years, and it's like someone has probably already grasped these things even more profoundly than I am already. And it's to say, like, whatever could be experienced seems to have been experienced. Like we're reaching the threshold of experience within this 3 or 4 dimensional space. Like it's bursting at the seams now, where like it can't just be more philosophy as usual and like physics as usual. Like something has to break through. The metaphor of butterfly or caterpillar into butterfly has to be useful in this domain. There's something about that that is occurring. Something like that. Or when you watch the sand on the vibrating plate and you turn up the frequency and it, emerges into higher forms or different forms, let's just say, that. And I keep asking, like, well, what would I do that would say nothing and everything, encapsulate form and no form, in and out, up and down, left and right, yin and yang? Like, what is it that expresses that and unifies the experience of that? And I've looked all over. I swear to God, I've talked to, I've just talked to so many people at this point. There's no doubt that I am at some kind of precipice of experience on this planet. There's no doubt about that. So, in regard to my novelty of, what could I think that no one's thought, or there's something about that I am inhabiting in the regard of, like, you hear, particularly people who have NDEs, and they're like, oh yeah, we're like going into this like cosmic shift or something. And like there's some people who I have a little harder time swallowing their message pill, where they're like, oh yeah, everything's peace and love and light or something. And I'm like, I don't think you've done a lot of spiritual work. Yeah. Seem to be just mimicking someone else's experience or something like that because you heard it somewhere else. No, I'm talking, there are some people who legitimately have been through the ringer. They've been to the other side. They know what's going on here. Okay. And now, how do you organize that? How do you say, yes, the way you experienced it is so, and it's ineffable, and it's true. And what unifies that? Because there's some one single thing, I am that, whatever that is, whatever it is, that is like drawing in further and further and further. And I've already talked about this, like singularities, like something to do with attention. Like our attention collapses the wave function. I was thinking about that. Well, what's happening in like a black hole? There's some kind of collapse. There's kind of like some kind of sucking in, sucking. I don't know what the term is, but a vacuum. And it's clear that I have more imagination about what is possible than most in this regard. Like what would it really truly, actually really, really look like to have an enlightened human race? Like, not as like, oh, way out, I'll like almost never happen. No, I mean like in like 30 years, like that could be. Like I'm saying earlier, it's like, no, you can fundamentally experience the world as wonderful as a child. There's nothing, there's no physical barrier to that process. It's some kind of illusion that you are maintaining in your mind, and that can be undone. Fundamentally, there's nothing in the laws of physics that says like, I must, continue to believe X. Nothing about that is true. Tomorrow you could, right now, actually right now, you could just go, done with it. It's over. Not, it's not part of my experience any longer. I mean, it doesn't usually happen that way, but it could happen that way. It could be so. It would be very traumatic, actually, because you're who you think you are would be goodbye. And so that would be a lot of whoa and reconciling and processing that, because that's very different than the way you one experiences the world now. Yeah. So that could be. There's nothing saying that couldn't be. And now I host one. I probably need to explain this. I was talking about what's up, down, left, right, empty and has form but formless. It's like, what is the very bare minimum? It's like, well, it has to be just like silence. It has to be void. It has to be potential. Because whatever I say about this all is detracting from whatever it is. Of course, the Tao that's spoken is not the Tao. Right. Got it. Right. And so there's this, how do you, just by your presence, your presence is the message, right? Things like Occupy Wall Street. It's like, okay, there's some game theory about that, right? There's like, this is useful because it attracts attention, and it's like the mere presence of people is like the message, right? I was like, okay, that's brilliant. There's something about that that drew a lot of eyes, and you know, hustled, and but there's buzzing around that. And I was like, yes, and that was for or against something. Like it had an opinion of what should be. I'm saying, what would have your presence be the message, but it's just that. It's just existing. It's just being. It's just is. That's it. It's not trying to have anyone be anything other than exactly where they are as they are. How do they perceive that? How do they come to that? What is their journey? What is their destination? Destination. Eh, I'll revoke that word. Maybe for this chapter of the story, the final part of this chapter. Maybe. Uh, no, it has to be open to interpretation. It has to be dynamic, adaptable, perspectival. It has to be fluid. Because from that is basically what happens at the quantum level, where you just have this bubbling up of like from nothing something. Whatever is supposed to be, whatever is, will come from that. I mean, mostly in a game theory way. I'm like, okay, what's the minimal amount of effort that you would have to put in to just like show that you are existing? It's like, show us that you have a pulse or something, or that you have a connection to the internet or something. Prove that you're connected to the internet. Like, okay, word. So you can just sit inside of a Twitter space. That okay. That's like as simple gets, right? I mean, hopefully it's as far as I can tell, the most like the biggest platform. Let's look it up right now. Is Discord user count? Okay. Discord has 150 million monthly active users. Twitter user count. 76.9 million users in the United States. 368 million monthly active users worldwide. Okay, so that is to say that it's the most accessed thing. I don't know if you want to call it thing, but like meta space or digital space that is publicly accessible in the world currently. Something like that. I'm like, okay, if you sit there and you just do nothing but exist there, at some point in time, you will reach a threshold where it will break through into like people going, what is that space? Why are there, let's start with the number 30. Why are there 30 people who are sitting day after day silently in our space on Twitter? And, I would point them towards this video where I go, you just, your existence is the message. Be who you are. Be that. If you don't know who you are, this question of who am I, come to know that. And I mean, I could direct anyone to, I suspect, I mean, what I will do is probably just direct them to Simply Always Awake, like the YouTube channel. Like Angelo is probably one of the most like clear speakers about any of this stuff of like the process of awakening, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's nothing that I can say that he couldn't just say better. But that, whatever that is. So, it's like the level, this is such a low commitment. You have these really high barriers of entry into like, oh, we gotta program this and do that and do stuff. Make a Discord channel, create the DAO, vet the users. I've already talked about this, about like how no system is the answer. You can just endlessly cycle through new interfaces and users and like algorithms, et cetera, et cetera. The final thing is this question of who am I? Who am I? And once that becomes the attracting force, of consciousness, of humanity, I don't know which term you would want to use. This is where novelty is created. This is where this whole thing called meme and memetics and like epigenetic evolution, this is the birthing ground of it, is like suddenly $30 people can turn. I mean, if I got my sphere of influence alone to sit in a room for 1 month, I would say I probably are in contact with 500 people. That alone would generate a lot, like a fair amount of buzz, right? There'd be a lot of people asking a lot of questions. What is this space? Why is it here? What are we doing? Blah, 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 right? That could quickly go into 600, 700, 800. But you see how it begets itself. That's the whole process of this. It's like the heavier it gets, this is just in accordance with like the way like a gravity well works or a black hole works. Like the heavier it is, the more it attracts and more it like even brings into itself. And that's where this intuition comes from. Like, what? No, we're not going to go out and colonize Mars. We're not going to go out and do more of this like energy gathering stuff. No, it's this culmination point. It's this eschaton singularity. And I kept wondering, like, how does that actually physically happen? It's something like this. There's something definitely unprecedented that's occurring. There's tons of evidence for us seeing this happen in nature naturally when things go to a higher frequency. Okay, A, B, C, D, E. Yeah, it's like the octave process. Like there are levels, like it's distinct, it's separate, it's unique, it is singular. A sharp is A sharp. You know, it's distinct from and discrete from A. And what I increasingly am seeing just through the process of like holding these one spaces is like the back channel, you know, like I see that a person here trickles in and they pop out. Then a person comes in, pops out. Like, okay, so you just keep that running. I've only had it for like 2 weeks. It's like, okay, so 2 months, more messages, more questions, more attention. 8 months, more attention, more questions, more popping in and out. What is that? Why is it? What's going on? Look to yourself. It's the mystery. It's the fucking mystery. It's the thing that I literally cannot speak about. It's just the very rock bottom of all, whatever is that final thing, that eschaton, that one point of experience, that one point of perception or whatever you want to word you want to put to that. It's like the truth. How do you come in contact with that? Waking up. However, so okay. So next time. Love you.